Hello and welcome to IGPP Expert Talks. I am Heena Goswami, Editorial Consultant with IGPP New Delhi. IGPP, in collaboration with the Ministry of Ports, Shipping and Waterways, has launched Bharat Prabha, India along its rivers and shores, to highlight the deep connotation and connection of rivers and seas with the social psyche, the Janmanas of Bharat. India has a glorious history of maritime connections, and its present has been shaped by the past influx of ideas, goods, and people through both sea travel and inland waterways. To highlight this connection, we have with us Professor Vasant Shinde. Professor Vasant Shinde is the former founding Director General of National Maritime Heritage Complex, Lothal. A world renowned archaeologist, he has also served as the Vice Chancellor of Deccan College, Pune. Welcome to IGPP Expert Talk, sir. Uh,
Thank you very
I'll,
much.
I'll begin right with the questions. Uh, we'll begin with India's maritime heritage. Tell us about the Harappan civilization and its maritime capabilities.
The Harappan civilization flourished in Indian subcontinent, the major portion of which, of course, lies on this side of the border. There are some sites in Pakistan also, but the total area that was occupied by the Harappan culture was something like 2 million square kilometer. It's quite a huge area was occupied. And the culture flourished from roughly from 5500 BCE to 1300 BCE. This is the total span of the Harappan culture. But there is one phase of the culture that is from 2600 to 1900 BCE, which is the most prosperous phase. And this phase has been, has been identified as the urban phase of the Harappan culture. It's also called the Harappan civilization phase also. So, the Harappans flourished mainly because of the trade activities. They did not have a lot of, natural resources available, but they had technology with them. So, the strategy that the Harappans adopted was very simple and very, practical and very effective. They imported the raw materials from the surrounding area, which was controlled by the contemporary population. And then they produced, goods on large scale, finished goods, and they supply the finished goods to the same people from whom they acquire the raw materials. That is how the Harappans began to develop and gain a lot of prosperity. And then at one stage they realized that there is a lot of maybe scope for developing contact outside Indian subcontinent. And then they started developing maritime contacts with Oman, with Bahrain, with Persian Gulf region, with Mesopotamia, and to some extent beyond that with the Egyptian civilization also. So, because of this trade, the Harappans, whatever evidence we have, that clearly indicates that, this trade was, surplus, beneficial to the Harappans. And they were sending a lot of goods. In return, they were getting very few goods from that side. So that means, they were generating a lot of wealth. So, by using the, trade, both hinterland and maritime trade, they, develop, the culture, and they develop from simple, maybe, agrarian society to urban society at some stage. So this is a, unique example in the world where, this wealth was used for the welfare of the common people and for the development of the, culture, in this part of the world.
After Harappan civilization, was there a decline in various Indian dynasties focused on naval power, or were there other empires who carried on this Harappan legacy of maritime trade and contacts?
So, before I talk about the, decline of the, trade activities, let me also mention that the Harappan civilization or the Harappan culture has not, suddenly emerged. There is a long precedence. In fact, it goes back to 7000 BCE, and there is a gradual growth. And the evidence that we have from the beginning of settled life, which goes back to 7000 BCE, clearly indicates that that people before the Harappans also they started developing contact with far off places, including the maritime contacts also. But the Harappans use that contact very extensively for their own benefit. That is that is the part. What happens after after 1900 BCE? Now we have some scientific evidence indicating that the climate has gone dry around 1900 BCE, and this was not a global this was not a local phenomena. This was a global phenomena. We have data from Europe, from China, from West Asia, from India, and clearly it indicates that around 1900 BC the climate became dry, and as a result of that there was a tremendous impact, negative impact of this climate change, and most of the well-known civilizations like Egyptian civilization, Mesopotamian civilization, Harappan civilization, they began to collapse. And it was a gradual process, of course. Collapse in the sense that that urban setup was broken into small settlements, and they reverted back to the rural setup after the decline, and they continued that up to 1300 BC. And the climate also continued to be arid up to 1300 BC. And after that what happens that people started dispersing in different directions. There were already people living in the in the Ganga plain, so some people went there. They got mixed with the local population there. Some people started moving towards towards Madhya Pradesh, towards Deccan, and also towards South India. So that is how the dispersal started. And then again because of the climatic conditions, they were not really able to generate a lot of wealth for maybe maintaining cities or developing cities. So that continues up to maybe 6th century BCE in Indian subcontinent. And after 6th century BCE, around 4th century BCE, Indians again started developing contact with outside world. And people had realized that unless we develop contact with outside world, it is not possible to generate a lot of wealth, surplus amount of wealth required for developing cities and towns or urbanization. So after a lull, in fact, the trade activity started with the Romans around 4th century BCE. That continues. Then after that, it continues. Initially, the ship, the focus was on the western coast of India. The Harappans mostly traded with the Western powers. So they developed some ports on the along the Saurashtra coast or Makaran coast, and slowly after maybe 4th century BCE, they started moving downwards, and there was a hub in fact at a place called Arikamedu, which is in Pondicherry. So that was a major hub, and from there of course again they started moving towards the eastern coast of India, and the trade was not only confined to the western part of the Indian subcontinent, but they also started trading with Southeast Asian countries, with East Asian countries also. And after that, of course, the trades continued with Chinese, with maybe the far off far east regions, etc. And that activity continues till today. In fact, after that we don't see any break as such. But that was a small break, and that break was because of the natural calamities that happened around that time.
So, when we compare India's maritime legacy with other classical civilizations such as the Greeks or the Chinese, what is unique about India's maritime history? Like, how does it differ and contrast from them?
See, one misunderstanding among the people is that we have learned the maybe technology of shipbuilding from the Romans or the Greeks, but and also the most of the infrastructures were developed after that only. But let me tell you that the site of Lothal, which now that site has produced evidence of a dockyard, the earliest and first of its kind anywhere in the world. And this dockyard, this particular site, was not only for was used for building and repairing ships, but it was also used as a port also. So Harappans, what they did, in fact, that, in order to carry out the trade, they developed some infrastructure. The evidence that we have indicates that they have developed number of ports along the coastal line. And we have identified, archaeologists have identified nearly 32 sites which can be, categorized as the Harappan ports. And among them was the, most developed one. So at Lothal, they developed this particular facility, the dockyard that they developed. It's a huge, structure. In fact, it is roughly 200 and 214 meter long. It is 37-meter wide, and it is 4-5 meter deep. And this particular structure, there are a lot of debate, in fact, where it was discovered. Some scholars, particularly the Western scholars, European and the American scholars, they did not really, agree with the identification of this particular structure as a dockyard. S.R. Rao, who was the excavator from the Archaeological Survey of India, he was the one, in fact, who identified this. He excavated that structure, identified that. But then, the evidence that is found associated with the structure is very important, which was not really considered by those who oppose this, particular identification. So there is a sloping platform attached to this, particular structure. So that is called wharf. And this is very important that, wharf is required because, for sliding goods up and down, this is required. So when, S.R. Rao discovered this, he invited some people from Indian Navy, some experts from Indian Navy. And he just, without letting them know what he thinks about this particular structure, he wanted to get, their opinion. And after observation, after, detailed investigation by the Indian Navy experts, they came up with the conclusion that the only function of this particular structure is a dockyard. So that was one, very clinching evidence. Secondly, also S.R. Rao excavated some anchor stones which are lying, in fact, in this particular structure. And the third important evidence is that, this is a very scientific evidence. A scientist from Indian NIO, National Institute of Oceanography in Goa, Professor Rajiv Nigam. Now he found some what he calls, as the mini flora fauna. So these are the small micro fossils from sea. So they were found, in fact, in that. He also found some marine shells in that. So that indicated that, this particular structure was used for, this particular purpose. So the point here is that, we have the earliest evidence of a dockyard, which was meant for shipbuilding activities. So I will say that, we have taught the world, in fact, how to build ships and boats, and the world has, maybe they have followed us, in fact, in maritime trade activities and various activities that, we undertook. So that is very important. People should know about this also.
What are some other ways in which you would say that, India's marine power and trade are interconnected? They have an interconnected history, and it is something that has continued till modern day.
So we have a vast coastline, more than 7,500 kilometer long coastline. And we have nearly, we have 9 coastal states, 4 union territories along the coast. And each state, has a unique cultural elements, in fact. I will say that, we have perhaps the, very, profound, very rich cultural and very varied cultural elements, in fact, along the coastal line. Unfortunately, till the development of this particular, maritime heritage complex at Lothal, we had not, given much importance to the maritime history of the country. And 2/3, history of the, of the country is dominated by maritime activities. So that was overlooked. In fact, we never cared for that. But we have such a, vast, coastline, and even though we have maybe different, cultural elements in different parts of coastal line, they were all connected to each other. And the common factor, of course, was the trade. So they were following different customs, different traditions in different parts of coastal line, but they were bound by the maritime activities. So they a lot of ideas were maybe moving from one, maybe from Gujarat to Bengal, from Bengal to Gujarat, that part. And they adopted maybe that, maybe this shipbuilding activities. They adopted traditional navigation activities, etc. And that was followed, in fact, all over. And some of the goods that we find, evidence of the goods that were traded, you find them all over, in fact. So that means that they're produced maybe maybe in some places, but for the export purpose, they were maybe sent to different ports along the coast. So some goods which were sent from Gujarat, the same kind of goods also were sent from Arikamid also from Chandrakitugarh, and also Tamluk area in Bengal. So this is how that that was, it was integrated in properly, and they have used this vehicle, in fact, for the prosperity purpose, and that is clear right from the Harappan till modern times. That is quite clear, and no wonder this government of India, not only government of India, but most of the countries, in fact, they are giving so much importance to the trade activities, and maritime trade is is considered to be best way, because it is very cheap also, and it is easy to maybe connect different countries without any obstacles. So because of that, this trade has or the maritime activities has become so important in Indian subcontinent. And they had contact with number of other countries. In fact, we have identified nearly 39 countries with whom our ancestors, the Harappans and later people, they were trading with them. And again, right from the early stage till modern times, the trade is that that the trade was surplus, in fact, with India. In fact, India had a lot of benefit of the trade activities. So that is the evidence we are finding, in fact, along the coastal line and in Indian subcontinent.
So it has been some scholars' assertion that despite the rich maritime legacy that India has, India's view of its past, its present, its future, has been somewhat landlocked. Uh, do you agree with this opinion? Do you agree that India's maritime heritage has not been given enough importance in historical writing, particularly?
Yeah, that is true. In fact, we, as I mentioned, that we hardly spoke about this, India's maritime heritage, maritime history. We used to give passing reference to to the maritime history, but now since we started working on this particular project, then we realized that how much rich maritime history we have, which is not in fact brought to the notice of the world. In fact, not brought it to the notice of Indians and the world. So now we have realized the importance of that. Even though we are a bit late, but now we are going to focus on this particular aspect, and we are going to learn a lot, in fact, from the maritime trade activities which are carried by our ancestors. So there is so much lesson that to learn from them. So maybe lessons, in fact, in shipbuilding activities, in traditional maybe this navigation activities, and a lot of people are following that activities even today. The knowledge system that was created by our ancestors maybe 5,000 years ago, that knowledge system was so relevant. And even today, in fact, people are finding that more relevant, and a lot of people are they're subsisting on the traditional knowledge system. So along the coastal line, right from Gujarat to Bengal, we have a lot of communities who are following this maritime activities. We have a lot of tangible and intangible heritage along this coast. So that is the history is so rich, and that history now is being brought to the notice of the world, in fact. So now we are realizing how rich this particular history is. So history is not only to understand the events, but history also is to to learn from that. And I'm sure that once this particular complex comes up, and once we try to maybe educate the people, in fact, about the significance of the maritime heritage of the country, I'm sure that people will realize the importance of that, and a lot of people will also gain from this knowledge, in fact, that will be spread through this maritime heritage that we are developing.
Tell us more about this maritime heritage complex at Lothal. You have been the founding director. Tell us how this idea was mooted, how it came into being, and what level of development has it reached as of now.
I think, I give this credit to our Honorable Prime Minister. When, they came in power in 2014, I think immediately, this our Honorable Prime Minister mooted the idea of the Maritime Heritage Museum and the complex. Because, he had visited, maybe some foreign countries, and he had realized, how rich and potential our heritage is, maritime heritage is. And we had made hard an effort, in fact, to showcase, our, heritage. So, it started, in fact, in 2014. But, for a couple of years, in fact, we were discussing. I was not part of that initially, but, there were a lot of discussion happening on this, how to go about. And then, the Ministry of Shipping, Minister of Ports, Shipping and Waterways, they came in picture, and they accepted this, challenge. It's a big challenge for them also. And then I joined this, in 2019. And after I joined, I had a small but very dedicated team. So we decided to, develop a, concept of this museum. So the idea is that, we want to showcase right from the beginning of, this, maritime activities. Even maritime activities happened before the Harappans also. In the prehistoric period, a lot of people, in fact, moved from Africa to Indian subcontinent. So they have crossed seas also. So from that time, this has happened. So now we have, we wanted to understand that particular part. We wanted to showcase that particular part. Then also, since, it is a part of, sea also. What is the science of sea? So we want to showcase, the science of sea also in one gallery. We have a lot of mythologies associated with the maritime activities. So those mythologies also will be part of, we want to showcase, some part of the mythologies there also. So we have one gallery where, it will be some kind of orientation gallery in which, science of sea, the movement of people right from the prehistoric times, that will be showcased in one gallery. We have a lot of evidence, that actual evidence, will be showcased here. We will try to get the objects, in fact, which have been excavated from different sites, and they will be, be part of the museum. Then the next gallery is from the Harappan times. So we are showcasing the trade right from the Harappans till modern times. So we have one gallery dedicated to Harappans. We want to showcase the actual evidence, related to hinterland trade and overseas trade, and, what are the, activities which go along with the maritime trade, trade that time. So that part is, will be showcased, here. The port town of Lothal, that will be recreated, right? Because, some part of the site has been excavated, but, we can showcase here, in fact, the entire town, how it was town when it was alive, in fact, when it was, bustling, in fact. So that part also will be showcased. Then after that, there is a, gap, or, maybe some kind of transition from Harappan to the Roman trade. So in between, there is a lot of, activities were happening. People were using a lot of, these waterways for trade purpose. And then, at some stage, they had come very close to developing the maritime trade activities again, in fact. But then, with the contact with the Romans, we started developing contact, on much larger scale. So we are going to showcase, this particular part also between, Romans and Harappans. Then the Roman trade contacts. We have a lot of evidence, we have excavated a lot of sites along the coastal line. So a lot of objects are available. So those objects also will be showcased here. Then the contact with Southeast Asia, contact with China, Korea, Japan. How, India was connected with these countries also. And also, we will be also continuing with the medieval period also, with Marathas, with Mughals, how they have continued with the, this particular activities. Then also, we want to showcase, the Maratha naval power also, how the Maratha naval power has come into existence. Then also, maybe there is a gallery, in fact, to showcase the emergence of Indian naval power also, how, gradually it has grown. So that part also, we want to showcase. Then also there are a lot of communities who are still making this, this boat building activities happening today also. So the traditional boat building and traditional navigation activities also will be showcased at one place. And since Gujarat had the longest coastline, in fact, more than 1600 kilometers, and we have a lot of evidence from Gujarat, and this particular museum is happening in Gujarat. So we are developing one, coastal or the maritime gallery of Gujarat also in that. Apart from that, heritage, different aspects, are going to be showcased. And at one place, people are going to see, the entire maritime heritage of the country, both tangible and intangible. If this museum is not there, perhaps nobody will be able to, see this entire heritage of the Indian subcontinent. So this is, the major portion of the museum that is coming up. Along with the museum, there will be a research institute also, Maritime Research Institute, where the researchers from different maybe Indian Ocean rim countries can come here. They can carry out the research. We can share our research, we can further our research in this particular field. And also for attracting people, there will be a lot of maybe entertainment programs also. Like we are developing theme based restaurants, hotels, also theme based parks. All these will be main attraction for the tourists. But the main attraction, of course, is going to be the Indian Naval Gallery, because there we are not only going to give the story of the development of the Indian naval power, but there we are going to showcase maybe some of the actual warships and these aviation vessels that they have used for the purpose. So that will be also main attraction here. Also, there will be a small gallery on the lighthouses, because we have the evidence of lighthouse going back to 7th century CE. So from 7th century CE till till today, how the concept of lighthouse has changed, how its perspective has changed from time to time. So that part also will be showcased. So at one place, that the entire heritage of the Indian subcontinent is going to be showcased. But apart from that, the most important part will be, a lot of ideas have flown from India to outside, from outside to India. A lot of cultural elements have traveled also, both ways, in fact. So we want to showcase that part also, how the cultural elements, the language has traveled from, even the mythologies have traveled from one part of part to another part. Particularly this Ramayana Mahabharata, particularly Ramayana is so popular in Indonesia, Thailand, Cambodia. The temple concept, how that is traveled to different parts. So all this cultural dispersion and the dispersion of the languages, all this will be part of the our heritage museum, in fact.
So, other than the complex, as a scholar, what other suggestions would you have to make the students and the youngsters aware about India's maritime legacy, and why is this awareness, in your opinion, important?
See, I think now it's very important, because when we talk about history, it is whether maritime history or maybe general history, uh, students only know about the events. We give more emphasis on what happened in the past, but we have not really made efforts to convey what is the contribution that India has made to the history of this South Asia, to the history of the world. Through this museum we can showcase that also. Okay, that is one part. Secondly, as I mentioned, that there are a lot of technologies which were developed maybe 5,000 years ago, what we call as the Indian knowledge system. Now this Indian knowledge system is so important. Now people should know the importance of the Indian knowledge system, because the knowledge system that they had created is so relevant. Even after 5,000 years also, we find it relevant. And let me tell you that India's GDP before the Europeans came here was something like 35-36%. And when the Britishers left, the our GDP was hardly 2%. So that shows how a robust system we had in the past, and because of this system that we have progressed. So this part should be conveyed to the people. People should come, students should come and learn about this. And also as I mentioned, that there are a lot of communities who are still following the traditional knowledge system. So, the knowledge, the technology that was used in the past was much more advanced. So we are reconstructing that part. So maybe, we can help the communities today who are following the, traditional law system to make their product better, so that they have, better, market. So this how, we can serve the nation also. And the students and the young generation particularly, they should know the importance of the heritage. And once they understand the importance of the heritage, significance of the heritage, then only they will come out and participate in the preservation and protection of our heritage. That is very important, because no government organization is, capable enough of, protecting the huge heritage that we have. It is a coastal heritage, maritime heritage, or inland heritage. We have huge heritage. And unless, there is a participation of the people, perhaps, this preservation, conservation, protection is not possible. And for that, people should know the importance. Once they understand the importance, they will come out and they will help us they will participate in this particular activity. And therefore, that our message is that this complex will be very, very useful, not only for entertainment purpose, but also for education purpose. So it will attract, large, huge number of, maybe young population particularly, and they will not be disappointed, because the way we are developing, that will be unique in the world, in fact.
Thank you so much, Professor Shinde, for joining us and enriching us with the valuable opinion you have given today. Thank you very much, sir.